Good afternoon, my name is Craig. I'm one of the technicians here at ICT US, and this video today is going to describe some common motor failures and issues that the 6 series run into. So the A6, S6, V6, and N6. However, the same ideas and fundamentals can be applied to any of our stacker units. So I already know this unit has 2 bad motors, and I will demonstrate what those sound like for you. I'll do that now for you. So the first noise you heard was the drive motor. The gears are stripped and it is no longer good. The second noise you heard was a high rev type noise. That was the stacker motor, and the gear is basically free spinning, so it's not actually moving the mechanisms. So let's go ahead and disconnect our power here. Set this unit aside for a moment, and let me explain what this big box thing is. This is one of our diagnostic units, the BT5. It provides power, processes credits for MDB, processes credits for pulse, but also gives you power for 34, 12, and 110. For the purposes today, we're going to be running off of the 12 volt line with just an extension. So you can test your motors with a 12 volt source, which is what I've basically put together here. I've wired up a simple motor harness that can provide 12 volts. And I've also brought along some other defective motors just to kind of give you an idea of what these sound like and the common failures that accompany these sounds. So this first one we just heard on the unit itself, which is the high rev type failure. You can see, I'll leave this on, but you can tell the cogs aren't moving as it should be. So that one is just free spinning. This next motor has a smashed gear tooth, so the wheels will spin, as you can see. But as you can hear with that popping type noise, it's basically skipping the tooth. So that motor, even though it is functional, can lead to bill acceptance issues, rejections, other kind of bad type issues. So you want to get that changed out with the new motor, which will be replacing in the unit here. I have them actually out and ready to be changed, but just so you can have an idea of what new good motors sound like, I'll demonstrate for those for you right now. New motors don't have any popping or grinding type noises. They just sound like a high rev noise, but the gears and cogs would move as they're supposed to. So that's a stacker motor. The drive motor is about the same. Alright, so let's go ahead and get these motors changed out in your unit. Clear off some space to work. Go ahead and start by removing your cache box from the unit. Simply just sliding the white tab up, pushing the box up, and pulling back. You can set your cache box to the side. Next, there'll be a cover here that covers your main CPU board. That can just slide up and be removed. I usually keep this top cover for holding my screws. Keeps them all organized for you so you don't have them floating around everywhere. To remove your bezel, there are 4 Phillips screws, 2 at the top of the bezel, 2 at the bottom. Remove those as well. With those 4 screws removed, the bezel can just be lifted off and also set to the side. With the cover and the bezel removed, you'll expose the CPU board. This board is held in by 3 screws, 2 at the bottom, 1, 2, and 1 at the center top. All 3 of these need to be removed. With all 3 of those screws removed, you can push a little bit of pressure here at the bottom of the board, and it should just pop out. If you push in the corner, yeah, the top of the board will just pop out. Looking in, there will be some harnesses connected, so you don't want to just pull this away really quickly. So the first one that you want to disconnect is the 2-pin drive motor. A little bit further down here you'll have your 2-pin stacker motor, your 3-pin hook sensor. That's what tells the bill acceptor that there's something in the bill path to activate the motors. Your LED harness, which is in a slide channel, so if you push that toward you or toward the front, that'll slide out and leave this last white flat cable. That can be pulled just straight out. You want to be a bit careful with that cable. If it's creased or bent, or go ahead and take it out here and show you. If any of these little connectors, the little fins, are bent up or frayed, I would recommend changing out that cable. That shorts out signals, and it could lead to the 3 flash error that you see, which is a sensor problem, and it's just that cable. It could be, that's all that's wrong. So with your CPU board removed, you now need to remove your LED board housing. That can be done by pushing on these 2, or squeezing on these 2 basically tabs. Squeeze them in towards the middle of the unit and then pull the whole thing back out, which will slide out your whole LED board housing. So the housing and CPU board can be set aside. And that just leaves you with your main housing and the metal motor frame that's in the middle that needs to be separated so we can actually access the motors. To do that, there is a black Phillips screw behind your white flat cable, and that would need to be removed. So with that screw removed, you will want to make sure that your drive motor is removed from the little tab that holds down the wire. And if you hold on to the frame drive housing, which is your sensor, and basically move that independent from your main housing on the outside, it'll actually slide down and allow you to remove it out the back. As you're removing it, be careful with your wires and route them out the front and separate out your main housing. Also set that to the side. We'll come back to that. So you're left with your metal motor frame and your frame drive housing. To get to your motors, they are covered by the stacker cap. Now, since we're on the stacker cap, let me bring up a concern that if you have an older unit, your cap may be black instead of gray. The main difference between those is that the gray style here, I can point out, has that little box that helps reduce the left and right movement of the up and down, and that was causing a lot of stress on the motors and made them fail early. So to remove those rails and actually get to the motors themselves, depending on the age of your unit, they might be held in with metal E-clips, or more commonly the newer units have the white nylon rings. If you do have an older unit that have the metal E-clips, generally a 5/64 flat screwdriver fits right in between those teeth and can pop those out really easily. With the nylon rings, you don't really need any tools. You could use some tweezers if you don't have a good access to these rings. But yeah, you just pull the ring off the post, and do that for all 4 of those. With those rings removed, you want to pull up on the top set of rails just to remove them from their 2 posts. And the same thing for the other side now, which will remove your whole stacker assembly. Let me go back and point out that little block on that stacker cap. This is the new style. The old black style will also have, well, possibly may have black rails instead of silver. If you have black rails, those would want to be changed out as well, as they could lead to early motor failure. So, with the stacker assembly removed, you are left with your drive motor and your stacker motors exposed. Your drive motor is the one that have the drive wheels that run the belts, and your stacker motor has the cog on the side that lines in with the rails on the side of the stacker, and which moves it up and down and pushes your money into the cash box. To remove these motors, there are 4 screws that you want to take out. The 2 large ones per motor, this one, this one, this one, and this one. The other smaller screws, such as these, those actually hold the motor together. So if you're not changing your own gears, which unfortunately you can't do anymore because they changed the design, you don't need to take those smaller screws out. So just those larger Phillips screwdriver screws can be removed. And with your wire routing, make sure it's not all bound up in the middle here, and pull out your motor. With the drive, I usually pull the belts off and just pull the belts back, just so they're up out of the way. The drive motor itself does have a little channel for its wires, so you want to be sure and that you're careful when you are removing these, as well as putting your new motor back. The wires do need to go into the channel, or else you may have the possibility of getting it wound up in that raster, and will obviously throw off your readings. So let's go ahead and switch over these motors, starting with the stacker motor first. Before we switch though, I like to just get a rag and clean out the center channel. A lot of grease and old oils from motors do leak out, and that wet oil is a really good magnet for dust and dirt, and that builds up over time, and that can definitely stress your motors. So just getting this clean while you have it open, it's advised. So your stacker motor, go ahead and route through that middle opening right there. Your drive motor, sort of pinch together the wires at the front, and remember to route those wires into that channel as such. And go ahead and put your Phillips screws back in. And reattach your drive belts just by draping it over your wheels, making sure they're secure as such. Your stacker cap itself has a beveled edge and a flat edge. This will coincide with your bill acceptor. So the top of your drive motor is flat. You want the flat side of your stacker cap to match that. So I usually start with the motor frame and frame drive on its side, and work the rails onto those posts, and then flip to the other side, do the same. And then with the nylon rings, you basically push it on to the side there, and it snaps on. Do that for those other three posts. Alright, now that your motor frame and frame drive are all together with your new motors, go ahead and put it back together in its middle main housing. So get your main housing, and at the bottom there is the one hole for your stacker motor and hook sensor. They both can use the same hole. That's fine. So when you get your main housing, go ahead and route those wires as described, and your top drive motor wire, ensure that it is out as well and not bound up inside. Before you push the motor housing into the main housing, be sure to pull your white cable out so it's not pinched up in there, and holding it together and pushing up, you should be able to slide, slide the whole middle motor housing in forward opposite the main housing. So there's like a slide group that it slides into. If your motors, like the wires or anything else, isn't correct, that won't slide in, and it won't be secure. You won't be able to put in your bottom screw here, and your unit won't operate as it's supposed to. So ensure that the middle motor housing is secure in your main housing, and that this bottom screw is able to be put back in, which is your small black Phillips screw. With your drive motor, be sure to route that back under the catch, so it doesn't get bound up in the raster, as I mentioned previously. Go ahead and grab your LED board housing and slide that back into the main housing. With your CPU board, go ahead and attach back your white flat cable, your 3-pin hook sensor, your 2-pin stacker motor, slide in your LED harness back into its channel. At the top, your 2-pin drive motor, and kind of tuck those wires back, and then sort of fold the board in onto the wires. You want to make sure that the board is seated flush. If it's not actually flush against the housing, you'll get a stacker error, since the board isn't able to read the home position of the stacker, since the board is actually pushed up a little bit. So as long as it's fully secured, go ahead and get the screws back in. Slide down your bezel cover, CPU cover, put on your bezel with 4 screws. Now when you put your unit back together, there may be a chance that your stacker cap is not reset to its proper position. So if that happens, Go ahead and power up your unit without your cache box. And that will reset the motors back to its home position and allow you to actually put your cache box on. Since these motors are new, I'll let you go ahead and hear these as well. So when you do have that one snack, you can put your cache box back on. And your 2 flash, you're ready to go and accept bills. If there's any other questions that weren't covered or you have other concerns, feel free to give us a call at the number listed there, which is 510-252-0868.